The Tolkien Road, Episode 78 of The Rings of Power and the Third Age, Part 1. Alright, go ahead. The Tolkien Road, 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 the Road of Tolkien, 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 the Road
Hey there, fellow travelers. Welcome to the Tolkien Road, a long walk through the works and philosophy of J.R.R. Tolkien. On this episode, we begin a two-part look at the last section of the Silmarillion, of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. On this part, we cover the story up to the end of the Second Age. Before we get started, why not hop on over to iTunes and leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback? It's a great way to show your support for the show and takes less than a minute. Thanks for listening, and enjoy! Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Tolkien Road. John here. I am, as always, joined by Greta.
Hey,
and I'm Spiffy, and she's Spiffy.
Yep, always and forever.
So let's just get down to business.
Whoa.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Saturday night. We're recording this on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
That's not when we usually record, FYI. So, we're like, let's just get down to business.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it and get it done.
Get her done.
Get her done.
As they say in the part of the world where we live, get her done.
Get her done.
That's right.
That's all right.
Before we do jump in, I want to mention a couple of correspondences from listeners.
Okay.
We always like to hear from our wonderful, amazing audience. We've shared. I think we said last time we kind of gushed about just how awesome it is to hear from folks. And we got a really great note. And I can't remember if I already shared this one with you, but we got a really great note from a listener named Nick Johnson. And here's what he said. He said, "Hey, John, I just wanted to drop you a line from the other side of the states out here in Southern California. I wanted to thank you for doing what you do. I listen to you and Greta on my way to and from work. I use it as a way to melt into Middle-earth and not the traffic I'm slogging in. I've been listening to the episodes out of order, but since I started reading the Silmarillion, I have started from episode 1, and I really appreciate it. I feel now that I have a greater understanding and grasp of what I have read. I recently listened to your episode where you discussed the guy that had negative things to say about what you do, but I'm here to negate everything that guy said. There are people out there like me that absolutely appreciate what you do in regard to Tolkien and his works. Whatever you do, don't stop doing what makes you happy, because from what I have seen, what makes you happy is making other people happy as well. Sending you and Greta a big transcontinental high five. Your friend and listener, Nick Johnson." So, transcontinental high five right back at you.
Seriously, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And a fist bump to boot.
Yeah. Nick, it's just great. It's great to get a note like that.
Mm-hmm.
I love the idea of, you're in traffic on your commute, the slog to work. We've all been there. And, just being like, oh, I gotta go to work another day, and you're tired and everything, and I love to think that you're listening, like it's a bright, shiny moment in your day to be able to sit there and listen, to us talk about Middle Earth.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome.
That's almost like kind of what I envisioned when I started the podcast in a way, Yeah. And that's why I fell in love with the podcasting format in the first place, is because I feel like it's almost something like when you're on a trip, or you're in the car for a while or something like that, or maybe you're out doing yard work for a while, and music, maybe the music you normally listen to just isn't quite getting it to you, doing it for you right then and there, and you're just you just kind of want to. You want to almost put yourself in a position where you're there with some pals, just talking about something that you all enjoy.
Yes.
Yes. And that's what I loved about other podcasts I'd listened to, and I love Tolkien, and so I was like, let's do a Tolkien podcast.
Yeah.
So it's so awesome to hear that, and like I said, transcontinental high five right back at you. Mm-hmm. We'll do an air five. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. That really keeps the wind in our sails.
It does. It's so good to hear. Mm-hmm. And speaking of wind in our sails, so we actually had a few recent reviews of our podcast on iTunes. I wanted to mention those because I appreciate those folks who go and take the time to do them.
Yeah,
you know?
I do too. Because I personally never take time to write reviews. Like Amazon's always asking me to write reviews, and I'm like, mm-mm. Even if I like it, and I probably should. I should review more things that I like.
Well,
so I appreciate people that take the time to do it.
Yeah, it's and you know, we understand that everybody has, you know, at the end of the day, we just think it's awesome that there's as many people listening out there right now as there are.
Absolutely.
Every single one of you. We're so grateful for you, and but it's awesome when somebody pipes up but yeah, the good thing about iTunes for us is that it each one of those kind of like helps you get, you know, a little more recognition in the world of iTunes, and the vast world that iTunes is, and that being the main source of podcasts out there. You know, it just bumps you up a little higher when people are searching for something on the subject of Tolkien. So one we had from back in June, and I just haven't looked at these in a while. This is from a listener named Av Hayes, I guess. And this listener says, "I love how you guys mix deep Tolkien knowledge with his storytelling. It adds a great new dimension to this world." So awesome, 5-star rating.
Yay.
Love it. Awesome, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
And then this one was just from 3 days ago, the 21st of September. It says, "Wonderful tour guide to escape to Middle Earth." And this is from Gar0U, I guess, or Garu, or maybe they're just stylizing it in a fancy way, Garu. Here's what it says. "For a very long time now, I've known the works of J.R.R. Tolkien were special. One of my earliest memories about books is carrying a paperback copy of The Two Towers to preschool, even though I could not yet read it. Somehow I got to adulthood without reading The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. I initially found Peter Jackson's movies tedious. I only came to appreciate the movies through my wife's love of them, especially the portrayal of Sam. The Lord of the Rings, LCG by FFG, I think that might be the card game that I've heard about from some folks, is what finally brought me around to the books, but it has been the Tolkien Road podcast that has guided me to a deeper appreciation of Tolkien's works." I mean, I just paused. There's more, but I just paused right there. I'm just like, yes.
Yeah.
Like, just to hear one person say that is like awesome.
That's really great.
I've been reading a chapter of The Fellowship of the Ring, then listening to the corresponding Tolkien Road podcast. Both activities have provided a much-needed escape, not to be confused with escapism. Well done. Tolkien would be proud of you.
Yes.
If you want to deeply appreciate Tolkien's work, I highly recommend pairing the Tolkien Road with your own reading of The Lord of the Rings. John's insight is superb. It's nice that his wife Greta is on the podcast too. So I read that last line of it, and I thought that was funny. I was like, I knew you would get a kick out of it.
Yes, absolutely. Hey, I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Well, I'm glad that you're on the podcast too.
Oh, well, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm here too.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I will say that I think you have a lot of good insights along the way too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And you know what? And I'm sure Garu didn't mean, you know, like that you don't, you know.
Oh, I know.
He was trying to say like, you know, hey, it's cool she's there too, giving her insights, you know.
I'm like the icing on the cake.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you all for those comments and
yes, thank you very much.
And leaving those reviews, and we just really appreciate it. We appreciate hearing from you all so much. So
we really, really do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's seriously like a shot in the arm.
It is. I want to say one other quick word about I can't give any details, but you can, if you didn't already know, you can go over to the website truemyths.org and you can sign up for my email list.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason you want to sign up for the email list, especially soon, is because there is a kind of special offer going on for one of the things that I've made that only people on the email list are getting right now. And it's possible that it could sell out. So you might want to go over there and check it out if you haven't ever signed up for that email list over there. And time's running out, so act fast on that. And I don't make things exclusive forever to my email list, but there's some things that there's only a limited edition of. And so anyway, I'm putting that word out there. I can't say much more than just that, because this kind of special deal I'm doing for them right now is just for the email list peeps.
Yep.
So as a special,
you got me very curious now.
Special props to them.
I think I might go sign up for the email list.
I think you're already signed up for it.
Oh, am I?
Yeah. So maybe you should go buy. Spend.
Maybe I should check my email first and then.
Yeah. That's true.
Figure out what that special offer is.
All right. Well, so yeah, don't forget about my email list.
Yeah, email us.
And there's going to be other. Look, you can get some cool free stuff just by signing up for it, and you don't have to buy anything. It's just you'll know about some cool stuff that you can buy if you so choose.
Right.
But in the process, you'll get some cool free stuff anyway.
Right.
So it's like, why not do it?
Yeah. Seriously.
So
win-win.
I don't send a lot of emails either. I'm not a spam happy kind of email. I always feel a little bit of like twinge of shame whenever I email somebody, which I think in the last year I've emailed this list like 2 or 3 times, and I'm always like, all these people are gonna hate me whenever I do it. And I know people really don't, and I can tell a lot of people like getting these emails. So I'm actually gonna try and do it more frequently. And we're going to be having some other stuff that comes along after this too, special deal kind of stuff. So go check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
Check her out. All right, I'm gonna drink something here. I'm thirsty.
Is that what you're doing? Yeah. Okay, drink away.
Oh yeah, that tastes good.
Yeah, I hope everybody had a nice Hobbit day. Bilbo's birthday was just 2 days ago. We haven't mentioned that yet.
That's right.
September 22nd.
Bilbo and Frodo. I know,
why do I keep forgetting Frodo?
Just go ahead and pretend like Frodo doesn't exist, even though he's, the one that carried the ring all the way to Mordor.
I know, but it wasn't his 11th, so that's why Bilbo sticks in my brain, not Frodo. But yes, it is Frodo and Bilbo's both together. Yeah. Which is really cool.
Their birthday is the
fun
same
to
day.
Share birthdays.
Yeah, so remember for next year, September 22nd.
Yes.
Yeah. So, cool. All right, let's talk about the Rings of Power in the Third Age.
All right, let's do it.
So, so the Rings of Power in the Third Age is the last, really the last chapter that's not some kind of appendix or something like that.
Right.
In the Silmarillion. It's not part of the Silmarillion proper, the Quenta Silmarillion, because that's just about the First Age. But like Akallabêth, it's kind of like a, it's this. Basically, Tolkien intended there to be, when the Silmarillion was published, it looks like Tolkien intended in his mind that there would be like the vastness of the Silmarillion and all the chapters that are there, right? Mm-hmm. Like a detailed kind of like account of the First Age and stuff leading up to the First Age. And then there would be these like shorter chapters that went along with it, Akallabêth, the downfall, which is the downfall of Numenor, and then the kind of the rest of the story through the end of the Third Age in summary form.
Got it.
Right?
Yes.
So it would be a complete, history of Middle Earth through all 3 ages that he created.
Like a very condensed version.
And so that's what of the Rings of Power in the Third Age is. So just a real quick recap on how we got here. So First Age, right? First Age is the age of the Silmarillion. The basic story there, and the First Age is actually, the First Age itself is actually pretty short compared to the other 2 ages, right? The other 2 ages, several thousand years. The First Age is really only like around 500 years. Okay. But there's a lot of prehistory that leads up to the First Age.
Right.
Prehistory, we have the creation of the creation of the Silmarils, and then the destruction of the 2 trees and the theft of the Silmarils by Melkor, who is then renamed Morgoth, and the pursuit of him and the Silmarils by the Noldor, who are a group of the Elves, right? And then we have, several stories that just kind of follow that arc. in the First Age. And finally, at the end of the First Age, Morgoth is thrown down, and he's cast into the beyond the walls of the world. Right? He's kind of cast into the darkness that's beyond the world.
Yes.
Okay. And never to return until the end of history, apparently.
It's a good place for him to be.
Right. However, and that's the end of the First Age. However, not Arundel. I'm sorry. Yes. However, so we have Sauron, who is was kind of like his chief lieutenant. Mm-hmm. You know, his second in command bad guy. Sauron remains, and at first kind of convinces people that he's going to do like kind of repent and come back over to the good side, but eventually he chooses not to, and he starts kind of waging war against the elves of Middle Earth that remain in Middle Earth, mm-hmm. and against the Numenoreans, who are the elf friends who are given a special land halfway between the Blessed Realm and Middle Earth.
Right.
3,000 years, and so that's the story of Akallabêth. That's the story that takes place in Akallabêth. And of course, you know, at the end of Akallabêth, Numenor is thrown down because of its pride in kind of assailing the Valar, mm-hmm. and their lands, and but a small remnant of Numenoreans escape the downfall, and these are good faithful Numenoreans who are still friends of the elves and friends of the Valar.
Right.
They escape to the shores of Middle Earth, and Sauron, though he is cast into the abyss with Numenor, his spirit escapes and he comes back to Middle Earth, and so we're still in the Second Age at this point, and that's where Akallabêth ends.
Right.
All right, and that's where this chapter really picks up. Okay, so in a way, this chapter overlaps a little bit with Akallabêth, right?
That's why I was a little confused when I was reading it.
Yeah. Well, what were you confused by?
Well, I was just maybe confused is the wrong word, but I was like, I thought we already read about all this stuff. I was having a hard time too, just placing it like chronologically, where. You know, just kind of, because it was talking about stuff that we had already heard about, mm-hmm. or knew about in Akallabêth, and so I was like, wait, is this before or after? And I was just, confused is the right word, so I was confused.
Well, it's interesting to note that if you go to the appendices in the Lord of the Rings, so if you've got a copy of like the Return of the King around, you can go to Appendix B, and you can get a timeline of all of the events that happened in the Second Age. And so really, you know, between, because Sauron was taken as prisoner to Numenor, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And by Ar-Pharazôn, and that lasted for about 50 years until, and it took about 50 years to convince Ar-Pharazôn that he should go and do battle with the Valar.
Right.
And so after that, you know, we have like basically a little over 100 years left of the Second Age. Okay. And remember, the Numenoreans live a lot, like 4 times longer than the average man.
Right.
Right. So they can live well over 100 years. You know, that might be like 30 years to you and me. Okay. Right. So we're really kind of in the last 100 years of this time span, and there's a lot. The first is Tolkien is want to do. There's a lot of stage setting, you know, and even in this chapter where it's just like, okay, you're talking about stuff that just happened in the previous chapters, mm-hmm. but you know, Tolkien still felt like it was necessary. This is a standalone kind of intended to be a standalone little synopsis, right?
You couldn't depend on people having just read
it. So we'll kind of figure out where it picks up, but understand that there's, you know, kind of some things going on concurrently with what happens in Akallabêth.
Okay. Helpful.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So that's how we got to where we are. We're at the tail end of the Second Age, like 3,300 years into the Second Age. Okay. Well, and actually, I should say, we're going to talk about Lindon now. Lindon, okay? Lindon.
Okay.
So Lindon is like the great Noldor kingdom that was established after the end of the First Age. Okay. And if we look at remember Beleriand, which was where all the Noldor, all the action really took place in the Silmarillion, right? Beleriand fell into the sea in the First Age, right? Or really, it was just overcome by the sea in the First Age, and so Beleriand no longer exists. But there's kind of like this little bit to the west of the Blue Mountains, right? These are the Blue Mountains, the Arid Luin, and I'm looking at the map in the back of Lord of the Rings, the one that covers all of Middle Earth. If you just look to the west of the Arid Luin in the north, this section where like the Gulf of Lune is, that's Lindon. Okay. That's where this Noldorian kingdom is. So it's interesting because that is like the last remnant of Beleriand. Yeah. Okay.
And that's where they
established their Noldorian kingdom. Okay.
Yep.
So that was established by Gil-Galad, okay, who was the son of, it says here, go back to our book just to make sure we get it right, because I sometimes get all my F names confused.
Fingon.
Yes, the son of Fingon. Okay, so he was the High King of the Noldor. And then Elrond is also mentioned in the same breath as him.
Right.
And so that country had of old been named Lindon by the Noldor, and this name it bore out thereafter. And many of the Eldar still dwelt there, lingering unwilling yet to forsake Beleriand, where they had fought and labored long. Gil-Galad, son of Fingon, was their king, and with him was Elrond, half-elven, son of Arundel the Mariner, and brother of Elros, first king of Numenor. And so this is where the Grey Havens come from, which still exist in the time of the Lord of the Rings.
Oh yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that is the Grey Havens. The Grey Havens are over there, and so Lindon is like this new sort of haven of the elves, starting out in the Second Age. Okay.
Okay.
And Gil-Galad is the High King of the Noldor.
Got it.
All right. So, as we said before, Sauron, the whole time during the Second Age, is kind of trying to set himself up as being, because there's this increasing divide between the people of Middle Earth and the Valar.
Mm-hmm.
Sauron is trying to set himself up as, like, he's basically trying to change people's minds that the Valar are good, and set himself up as the good one, and them as the bad ones. Okay.
Now, has he been thrown into the abyss yet? Like, has that final battle happened?
Not here at the beginning of the chapter. So, 287. Why don't you go ahead and read where it starts? Men he found the easiest to sway.
Men he found the easiest to sway of all the peoples of the earth. But long he sought to persuade the elves to his service, for he knew that the firstborn had the greater power. And he went far and wide among them, and his hue was still that of one both fair and wise. Only to Lindon did he not come, for Gil-Galad and Elrond doubted him in his fair seeming, and though they knew not who in truth he was, they would not admit him to that land. But elsewhere the elves received him gladly, and few among them hearkened to the messengers from Lindon, bidding them beware. For Sauron took to himself the name of Annatar, the Lord of Gifts, and they had at first much profit from his friendship. And he said to them, Alas for the weakness of the great! For a mighty king is Gil-Galad, and wise in all lore is Master Elrond, and yet they will not aid me in my labors. Can it be that they do not desire to see other lands become as blissful as their own? But wherefore should Middle-earth remain forever desolate and dark, whereas the elves could make it as fair as Iressa, nay, even as Valinor? And since you have not returned thither, as you might, I perceive that you love this Middle-earth, as do I. Is it not then our task to labor together for its enrichment, and for the raising of all the elven kindreds that wander here untaught to the height of that power and knowledge which those have who are beyond the sea?
Yeah. And so it's in this land of Eregion, which is it's actually Eregion is where like the Shire is.
Okay.
Right. Make sure I got that right. I'm sorry. Eregion is Holland. So you remember when we in the Lord of the Rings when they're about to go into Moria. Mm-hmm. They're on the west side of the Misty Mountains, and they're about to go into Moria, and they get attacked by that Watcher in the water thing. Yeah. So that's Eregion. That's the land of Holland. So that's where that's this kingdom where the elves and the dwarves kind of had this interface way back when, and so this is another elvish kingdom that they're talking about there with Eregion.
Okay, and that's where the people like Sauron a lot. AKA
Holland, yeah, because he was, Sauron was all about making, right? Sauron was all about making things, and he was, it was the same old story, right? Oh, they want to hold all the cool stuff for themselves, and they're not willing to come over here and teach you guys. So why don't we beautify what's over here? Why don't we make all this stuff grand and glorious?
Right. Yeah.
And so he was good at appealing to their nature, and so it's there that his counsels are most gladly received, and he kind of guides them in the construction of these rings of power.
These are elves, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sauron guided their labors, and he was aware of all that they did, for his desire was to set a bond upon the elves and to bring them under his vigilance. Now, they made many rings, but secretly he made one ring to rule over them all.
Right.
Okay, so he was aware of everything they were doing, and so he could create this one ring to rule over all of their rings.
Okay.
And that's where the One Ring came from. He forged his One Ring in Mount Doom and the Mountain of Fire in the Land of Shadow. But the elves, of course, were kind of quickly sort of figured out what he was up to, and so that's where the 3 elven rings came from, and he was never able to really gain mastery over those.
So wait, where did 3 come from?
They came from Eregion.
Okay, so of the many
I should say, you know what? We're probably saying it wrong. It's probably Eregion.
Eregion. Okay, so of the many rings that these elves made, they just took 3.
No. Well, I think when he says that, I think he's talking about the 3, the 7, and the 9, right? The 7 for the dwarves and the 9 for the men, right? That they made all of those rings.
I see. Okay. And the 3 that the elves ended up with were part of that group.
Right.
Okay.
Now these were the 3 that had been last made, and they possessed the greatest powers. Narya, Ninya, and Vilya. They were named the Rings of Fire and of Water and of Air, set with ruby and adamant and sapphire. And of all the elven rings, Sauron most desired to possess them, for those who had them in their keeping could ward off the decays of time and postpone the weariness of the world. But Sauron would not discover them, for they were given into the hands of the wise, who concealed them and never again used them openly, while Sauron kept the ruling ring. Therefore the 3 remained unsullied, for they were forged by Celebrimbor alone, and the hand of Sauron had never touched them. Yet they also were subject to the One. They create the 7. The dwarves are not nearly as easy to rule as Sauron had hoped.
Right.
So he has to get them in sort of a roundabout way, whereas the men proved easy to ensnare. All right. So I'm going to go and read a little bit of this section. Men proved easier to ensnare. Those who used the 9 rings became mighty in their days, kings, sorcerers, and warriors of old. They obtained glory and great wealth, yet it turned to their undoing. They had, as it seemed, unending life, yet life became unendurable to them. They could walk if they would, unseen by all eyes in this world beneath the sun, and they could see things in worlds invisible to mortal men. But too often they beheld only the phantoms and delusions of Sauron. And one by one, sooner or later, according to their native strength and to the good or evil of their wills in the beginning, they fell under the thraldom of the king that they bore, and under the domination of the one which was Sauron's. And they became forever invisible, save to him that wore the ruling ring, and they entered into the realm of shadow. The Nazgul were they. the ring wraiths, the enemy's most terrible servants. Darkness went with them, and they cried with the voices of death. So, again, that it's very similar kind of thing there to what happened with Numenor, where it's like, there's just intense desire to be able to cheat death, which is normal for men, right? They're mortal beings, so it's normal for men to die. And men are easy to ensnare for Sauron because of that factor, because they do want to escape from death. And so Sauron, as it says, has set himself up as the Lord of Gifts, Anatar. And one of the gifts that he tells men he's going to give them is relief from death, right? But it just so happens that it's not going to be a very nice existence. Well,
that's what's so tricky, is he technically wasn't lying.
Yeah.
But it's not, he was going to make good on his promise, but not in the way that they wanted,
Right.
Not the way they were expecting. Like, they wanted to live forever, right? And beautiful havens like the elves. They didn't want to be ring wraiths. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't want it that way, but that's what they got.
Yeah.
That's what they got. So that's that's the story of how we get the various rings, as well as the One Ring. Now, all the while, and this is kind of getting us up, contemporary with where we left off at the end of Akallabêth, right? End of Akallabêth, we have the remnant peoples led by Elendil, the son of Amandil, right? And Elendil's two sons are Isildur and Anarion.
Right.
So Elendil, Isildur, and Anarion all get in ships with a bunch of other of the faithful Numenoreans, and just as Numenor is going under, they manage to get away and make their way over to the shores of Middle Earth.
Right.
And in that time, Elendil kind of gets separated from them, and his group goes north, and then Isildur and Anarion end up towards the south. So again, if we refer to our little map here at the back of Return of the King, here we go. So Elendil. All right.
Something for you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Elendil basically landed up here.
Okay.
Right? Or maybe it was closer to down here. But anyway, up in the north, quadrant 1, right? Isildur and Anarion landed down here, right, at the mouth of the Anduin. Okay? All right? Now, obviously, what they create becomes a united sort of kingdom, but there's a northern and a southern kingdom. The northern kingdom is known as Arnor. Okay? Northern kingdom is known as Arnor. The southern kingdom is known as Gondor.
Right.
So that's where Gondor comes from.
Got it.
All right. Okay. Isildur and Anarion found Gondor.
Got it.
Arnor is in the north. And obviously, you look at the map, Gondor just so happens to be close to Mordor. Right? Kind of bad luck, but that's so they get stuck with being the ones that have to, hold the line against Sauron.
Pretty horrible neighbors, yeah.
Yeah, really, really bad neighbors. So one other thing to note that we learned about Elendil. And this is really interesting. So you see here on this map. So quadrant 1 on the Third Age maps contains like smack dab in the middle, like basically the Shire, right? Excuse me. All right, yeah. Bless me.
The Shire is
The Shire is in the middle of this region called Eriador, which is where the realm of Arnor was founded. Okay. But in the time of the Third Age, it no longer exists, right? The realm no longer exists. But you can see here that Anúminas, which was the city, the capital city of Arnor, right here, is just like, it's just north of Hobbiton. It's literally directly north of Hobbiton on this map. Maybe only 100 miles, right? So it's interesting to think that like the hobbits rise up here just to the south of like the heart of Arnor, which was in one time this great kingdom of Numenoreans.
Yeah, that is pretty wild.
So yeah, check out that map. So we have Arnor in the north, Gondor in the south, and it doesn't take long for Sauron to be back up to his old tricks again. He realizes there's some Numenoreans left. By now, Sauron is not really able to take on kind of a fair visage. He's just, he's scary to look upon now.
Right, because he's basically just his spirit.
Well,
right?
His spirit, but whatever, and I don't understand entirely how this works. Let's see if we can find the reference to where it talks about it.
But now this is after he was cast, right, into the dark hole of nothingness. And all that came back, essentially, I thought, was his spirit, right? He wasn't able to make himself
all right,
fair.
We'll get to Sauron. Well, actually, we'll come back to Sauron in just a moment. Let's talk about a couple other things when it has to do with Gondor. Okay. So, and when we get back to the Lord of the Rings and the rest of the Lord of the Rings, we'll see these cities a lot more. But the main Gondor city that we know of in the Third Age is called Minas Tirith. Right. It's this beautiful white city of many levels up against the mountains. However, if you look at the map, you'll see that there's 3 little cities. If you look at this the zoomed in map of Gondor and Mordor, you can see that it's like a really small little tight neck right here that it narrows down to around the river Anduin. Okay, so you've got Minas Tirith right there, Osgiliath right here, which is like a city on the river. Right, it like spans the river. Right, and then you've got Minas Morgul. Okay, but here's the thing: all Minas Tirith and Minas Morgul both were founded with different names. They were founded by Gondor with different names. Minas Morgul in the time of the Third Age is the city of the Ringwraiths. Okay, it's an evil city, but it was founded as Minas Ithil. Okay, Minas Ithil, the Tower of the Rising Moon. Okay, and Minas Tirith was founded as Minas Anor, the Tower of the Setting Sun. Okay. So they were the city of the moon and the city of the sun when they were first founded. Okay. All right. And it's only after Minas Ithil is lost, and later on, we'll find out why Minas Tirith Minas Anor was renamed Minas Tirith. But Osgiliath was like the big city of Gondor at that time, right? So these other places were more like tower, like watch, like almost like citadels, right?
Like guard towers.
Yeah. These are Osgiliath was like a city, as we tend to think of it. Okay. So an interesting note, and then another quick note about the things they brought with them, the kind of big.
That the Numenoreans brought.
Yeah, the Numenoreans brought with them. So they brought the 7 stones, which are the Palantir, and the white, like the white tree, the new white tree,
or the like the little the one that Isildur took the fruit from the original one and then grew this one from there.
Right. Okay. Exactly. Yeah. So that's come with them, and then the 7 seeing stones, and so they give 3 stones to the north, and then 2 to Isildur, and 2 to Anarion.
Now, is one of these stones what functions as Galadriel's mirror? No,
that's not Galadriel's mirror. Let's read a little bit about the Palantiri here. So 292. Okay. You want to read that? 3 Elendil took.
Yes. 3 Elendil took, and his sons each 2. Those of Elendil were set in towers upon Emin Bereid and upon Amon Sul, in the city of Anuminas. But those of his sons were at Minas Ithil and Minas Anor, and at Orthnach and in Osgiliath. Now these stones had this virtue, that those who looked therein might perceive in them things far off, whether in place or in time. For the most part they revealed only things near to another kindred stone, for the stones each called to each. But those who possessed great strength of will and of mind might learn to direct their gaze whither they would. Thus the Numenoreans were aware of many things that their enemies wished to conceal, and little escaped their vigilance in the days of their might.
I'll read the rest there. It is said that the towers of Emin Bereid were not built indeed by the exiles of Numenor, but were raised by Gil-Galad for Elendil, his friend. And the seeing stone of Amen Baraid was set in Elosterion, the tallest of the towers. Thither Elendil would repair, and thence he would gaze out over the sundering seas, when the yearning of exile was upon him. And it is believed that thus he would at whiles see far away even the tower of Avalonier upon Erisea, where the Master Stone abode and yet abides. These stones were gifts of the Eldar to Amandiel, father of Elendil, for the comfort of the faithful of Numenor in their dark days, when the elves might come no longer to that land under the shadow of Sauron. They were called the Palantiri, those that watch from afar, but all those that were brought to Middle-earth long ago were lost. I don't know, we'll probably have to do a deep dive on the Palantiri at some point, but it's just interesting to think about them as like, they're these little windows into like windows of hope, windows into paradise, but they can also be used by the enemy, Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. So, all right, yes, and now Sauron returns. So, he came in secret, as has been told, to his ancient kingdom of Mordor beyond the Ephel Duath, the mountains of shadow, and that country marched with Gondor upon the east. There, above the valley of Gorgoroth, was built his fortress vast and strong, Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower, and there was a fiery mountain in that land that the elves named Orodruin. Indeed, for that reason Sauron had set there his dwelling long before, for he used the fire that welled there from the heart of the earth in his sorceries and in his forging. And in the midst of the land of Mordor he had fashioned the ruling ring. There now he brooded in the dark until he had wrought for himself a new shape, and it was terrible, for his fair semblance had departed forever when he was cast into the abyss at the drowning of Numenor. So he does forge for himself a new shape, but it's not like his shape of old where he was fair to look upon, and so he could be a lot more, convincing. He was scary. He just scary.
It was like his true self. Yeah, was shining through. He wasn't able to put a mask on any longer.
Yeah, in a way. Well, it's interesting to think that he can't. Like, he's just not able to forge. So, and yeah, I almost wonder if it's like just kind of his continued decline. Mm-hmm. He started out as this beautiful Maiar, right? And he's just continually corrupted more and more.
Right.
And so
to the
maybe
point where he just
obviously the Valar and the Maiar, they're spirits, and so when they put on flesh, they do it more like they're wearing clothes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like an expression of their inner self, of their spirit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's interesting to think that he can't really do anything that looks nice anymore.
Yeah, because there's nothing.
He just looks mean.
There's nothing nice in him anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take Sauron long to build up his forces, and he doesn't want to wait long anyway, because he's like, well, if I let them build up their forces, then they're gonna get strong. So he goes and he wants to strike pretty quickly. So within the space of just basically I want to say like 50 years maybe, within the space of within the space of about a little over 100 years, Sauron becomes capable of attacking.
How many years did you say?
Like a little over 100 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sauron becomes strong enough to where he can go and he can attack Gondor.
He has a big enough army of horrible things. Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. So he attacks Gondor, and he took Minas Ithil, and he destroyed the white tree of Isildur that grew there. So he takes the city of the Tower of the Moon.
Right.
But Isildur escaped, and taking with him a seed of the tree, he went with his wife and his sons by ship down the river, and they sailed from the mouths of Anduin, seeking Elendil. Meanwhile, Anarion held Osgiliath against the enemy, and for that time drove him back to the mountains. But Sauron gathered his strength again, and Anarion knew that unless help should come, his kingdom would not long stand. And that's the point at which Elendil and Gil-Galad formed the last alliance of elves and men.
Okay.
Right? And so this is, if you think to Jackson's movie, Fellowship, that big scene at the beginning where the big army marches up to Mordor, right? And like Elrond is there and everything, and Sauron comes out with his ring on and with the scepter. Mm-hmm. That's that's the last alliance of men and elves.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Going against Sauron and his forces.
Got it.
So they bring a pretty incredible host. It is said that the host that was there assembled was fairer and more splendid in arms than any that has since been seen in Middle-earth, and none greater has been mustered since the host of the Valar went against Thangorodrim, right, at the end of the First Age, the War of Wrath.
Right.
So they go up and they go onto the battle plain of Dagorlad, which lies before the gate of the Black Land. And the elves and the men, they do defeat Sauron, but it's at a cost, right? So you want to read those last two paragraphs there, the host of Gil-Galad,
yes,
on 294.
The host of Gil-Galad and Elendil had the victory, for the might of the elves was still great in those days. The Numenoreans were strong and tall and terrible in their wrath. Against Aegolos, the spear of Gil-Galad, none could stand, and the sword of Elendil filled orcs and men with fear, for it shone with the light of the sun and of the moon, and it was named Narsil. Narsil?
Yeah.
Then Gil-Galad and Elendil passed into Mordor and encompassed the stronghold of Sauron, and they laid siege to it for 7 years, and suffered grievous loss by fire and by the darts and bolts of the enemy, and Sauron sent many sorties against them. There in the valley of Gorgoroth, Anarion, son of Elendil, was slain, and many others. But at the last the siege was so strait that Sauron himself came forth, and he wrestled with Gil-Galad and Elendil, and they both were slain, and the sword of Elendil broke under him as he fell. But Sauron also was thrown down, and with the hilt shard of Narsil, Isildur cut the ruling ring from the hand of Sauron, and took it for his own. Then Sauron was for that time vanquished, and he forsook his body, and his spirit fled far away and hid in waste places, and he took no visible shape again for many long years.
Yeah, so, it's at a cost. Gil-Galad and Elendil both perish.
And
Anarion,
yeah.
right? But they do defeat Sauron, and seemingly for a long time.
Yep.
And that is the end of the Second Age. So we're gonna pause, hit the pause button on this chapter for now. We'll come back and we'll talk about the grand sweep of the Third Age, because even where we are in the Lord of the Rings, there's 3,000 years of history that have happened between even the end of the Second Age and
where we are in
the Lord of the Rings. Yeah,
craziness.
So there's lots of things that happen in between, in between those two things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so any thoughts, any questions?
No, I understand it much better now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good. That's the goal.
All right.
So
mission accomplished.
Yeah, so we got to do some haiku, and I got to pull up the haiku theme song.
Why do you never have it ready to go?
Well, I do usually.
Ever.
But yeah, I do.
Did anybody
usually.
send in any words?
Huh? Oh.
Have anybody submitted any words for our haiku song?
No words.
They might still.
They might?
They might.
Yeah.
I meant to put some together. I just forgot.
Well, maybe you should write some. Maybe you should write some really bad ones and threaten people that these are going to become the words from the Tolkien Haiku theme song, and then they'll write some other ones.
Maybe. That might be what it takes. Just knowing that they'll have to listen to that horribleness every time. Might be enough. Might be enough to get some submissions.
Right on. Okay. All right. Do you want to go first?
No, I didn't get one done.
Oh, you didn't get one done?
Well, I wrote one, but then...
You wrote one?
I did wrote one, and then you told me we were only going to do the first half, and the one I wrote was for the second half. So
okay, that's fair. That's fair enough.
I'll have one for the second half, our next episode.
All right. Well...
It'll be extra awesome.
All right, I'll do one, and I got to say, I don't know, we'll see what you think of this.
Okay.
Buried and ruined, memory of shadows past, too easy to ignore. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it. I was like...
I don't get it.
Well, okay, moving on. All right.
You don't want to explain it?
Josh sent a couple of haiku. I'll let people figure it out for themselves.
Okay. I just need some time to mull it over.
Yeah.
meditate on it.
Don't think too hard. Your brain might...
It might explode. Or implode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah, at the same time.
Implode and then explode.
That would be horrible.
Okay, yeah, Josh sent two haiku. Mr. Josh Sosa. And one of them was for the second age, and one of them was about the third age. So I'm going to save the third age one for next week.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. Here we go. Second age he forged, but fair Anatar no more. Gil-Galad his end. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Better than mine.
I like it.
I think the problem with mine was there was nothing about like that actually, like that could be about anything.
Yeah, it could be about anything.
And I realized that, and I was like, oh well.
Hey, it's open for interpretation. It can be whatever people want it to be. They can put their own stamp on it.
Yeah.
It's a blank canvas.
Maybe someone can interpret it for me, so I can tell me what I wrote.
What was I trying to say?
What was I really trying? I need like a psychoanalyst or something like that. What was I really trying to say, doctor?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, that's good. Those are both. Well, Josh's was good.
Well, at least I wrote one, Greta.
At least you wrote one. Yeah. Well.
At least I tried.
That is true. That is true. You get the trying award for tonight.
I get the trying award. I'll take it. Put it on the mantle next to the rest of my trying awards. All right.
It's like a participant trophy.
Yeah.
Like, good job. You won 0 games.
That's right.
And you only showed up for half of them.
Yeah.
But you still get a participant trophy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because we have to, right? Or else your self-esteem will...
At least I participated.
At least
you didn't get a participant trophy.
I didn't get a participant trophy?
No.
Well, for the episode I did. But not for haiku, I guess.
Not for haiku.
Is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Everybody knows that.
I'll get one next week.
All right.
Next time.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's all we got.
Oh, that wraps up our Silmarillion. I won't have to pick up this book ever again.
Well, no, we have to do it one more time next week.
Oh, fudgeables. I forgot. We only did half of it. Dang, it felt like we did the whole thing.
Get your head in the game.
It felt like we did the whole thing.
Get your head in the game.
So long and tedious.
Man, oh, man.
Oh, yay. Tell you what. What will you tell me, John?
Get your head in the game.
Get my head in the game.
Get your head in the podcast.
Well, actually, I don't have to read any more of it. That's what I meant to say.
Well, you got to review half the chapter so you know what you're talking about.
I have super memory. What are you talking about?
What you talking about, Greta?
I'll remember it by next week. It'll
all
still
right.
be there.
Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's let these poor people turn us off now.
turn us off.
Just turn us off.
Yeah. Let's let these poor people stop listening to us. Yeah. All right.
What's wrong with their lives?
Well, yeah, you guys rock. Thanks for listening,
Yes,
and we will talk at you next time.
Yeah, we will.
All right.
Right, we'll be here, so hopefully you will be too.
You will.
Yes.
I think.
I
hope. Okay.
That's the plan.
Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.
Please remember to check out truemyths.org for show notes and plenty of other Tolkien goodness. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, would you please leave the Tolkien Road a rating and feedback on iTunes? It's a great way to support the show and takes less than a minute. On our next episode, we'll discuss the second part of the Rings of Power and the Third Age. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, the road goes ever on.